Right. Let's do it.
Cool. I don't know if we need to do any like pre-show stuff because no one knows that we're doing this. Uh, Also, so I don't expect anyone to be on any sort of chat, although we'll have the chat open just in case. And also, this is just going to be like catching up on stuff. So, yeah, we're ready to go with a. I guess we'll start, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm I'm good with it.
Grant, we are back on the function call. It's 2023. It's been a cool minute. How are you doing?
I'm present and accounted for.
Yeah,
So,
you you do
doing
sound
the
like you've
deal.
got some auto tune going on. Did you new year, new voice?
New year, new voice.
Yeah.
I have made this huge mistake of mounting my audio, my like miniature audio rack, down low, and my child sees the lights and immediately comes and like starts messing with stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that's a big part of the issue.
Yeah, something definitely got funked up because
Yeah,
that's the
there's
thing. Okay, so this is almost a discussion. We should maybe, I don't know. This is not like an audio show or anything, but one thing might be interesting is maybe people would be interested in hearing about like recording setups because I know that we are on opposite ends of the spectrum here.
oh yeah.
I basically went for the top end mic that I could find that was still USB capable. And
Okay.
this one's good. It has like I don't even know what it's called, but the professional style plugin that's not USB. It's like
XLR?
XLR. I was
Hmm.
gonna say that. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's yeah. So I went like basically it's like $100 mic, whatever, but it's USB, and to me that's like mwah, simplicity.
Mhm.
And you, on the other hand,
I have I have problems. So like yeah, and
you have super
clearly
nice mic.
they're the problems are audible. I have an SM7B. I have like a 500 series workhorse tiny rack, made by a company called Radial, and it's got some equipment in it. And it, like honestly, if I were to do this all over again, Shure makes a version of this microphone that is USB. And I would probably just go for that because it's incredibly simple and it sounds like almost as good. It's so close. Like it just
Yeah,
doesn't. Most people wouldn't hear it. It wouldn't matter. Um,
right.
and
Some of the like audio setup people, they kind of it strikes me kind of like the same people that really get into coffee.
oh well, yeah, that's also me.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. Like you can be like, yeah, but the thing is, I mean, you can't hear the difference, but you can feel the difference. You can sense it in your soul, and not to make fun of people that are really into audio, because I think that you can actually hear the difference between my mic and if I were to record. I mean, basically, all of the listeners are missing out on the actual sweet, sultry deliciousness of my natural voice because it's going through a USB mic instead of, sorry.
Well, they'll just have to
But
imagine to make up the difference there.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, like to me, uh, it's because your setup goes your voice from your mouth into your microphone.
Well, through the air.
Okay, okay. Well, all right,
If we're
hotshot.
getting deep.
All right, you're from your mouth through the air into the microphone. I mean, at that point, I think it turns it. I think that hits a crystal, and then the crystal like digitizes it. But let's not get too deep. Mouth, microphone, into like to me, it's mouth microphone into computer through USB. For you, it's mouth microphone. I need it. How many times am I going to say mouth? It's starting to lose meaning. Mouth microphone, and then
Oh, and then it goes into preamplifier, and then it goes
mhm,
into a noise gate, and then it goes
uh-huh,
into a compressor, and then it goes into a DAC. Well,
which
it's
is
actually an ADC. It's an analog to digital converter. It. uh, so your microphone has a tiny chip in it, so it takes it from the little microphone crystal, which actually emits analog electricity.
Hmm.
That goes into a digital to analog converter, or in this case, an analog to digital converter, and then spits it out USB. I have an entire
Hmm.
box that does this, like analog to digital conversion,
Right, but okay, so
audio interface.
you plug your microphone into this box, and then you plug the box into your computer.
Yes.
Hmm. And yeah, and that's really not so much. That's like one extra step basically, but then it's got all the knobs and slides and
It's got a
dongles and
whistle.
things. It's got a whistle and a
Hmm.
bell. Actually,
It's
a few
got
bells.
so many bells.
Yeah. Anyway, all this to say that I really value simplicity for this. Like the difference in quality is just going to probably highlight and make me sound even more funny. So
I
yeah,
mean, I really think you've passed the point of diminishing returns, which is like this is the right place to stop in most hobbies, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
you get to that like good enough place. And my personality just dictates that I take everything several steps too far. So that's what I've done. And now I regret it because if I sound terrible on this podcast, I'm going to spend, hours tweaking this and then having to find a way to separate my child from the
I think
devices.
yeah, I think you need to
Separate,
specify.
dismember him.
Yeah,
If
I
he-
was like, Grant, you might want to elaborate on that.
I'll finish that thought. Sorry.
Uh,
Oh.
yeah. Well, anyway, it's been a cool minute. We got through this audio conversation without hopefully losing too many listeners. How was your holidays? Let's catch up a little bit and then maybe talk
Oh.
about what's on your mind.
Oh yeah, it's been wild. I got to take a lot of time off work, which was really cool. I like not working. I know there are folks out there that are like, they take a couple weeks off and they're just chomping at the bit to get back. I'm not really that person. I could just not work for the rest of my life and be really okay with that. That said, um, but before we went on this extended hiatus, we'll call it, I switched to a different team. This team has a level of organization that I haven't had on some of my previous teams here. And so it's like when I came back, I just knew what to do and got to it and didn't have to dig through, months or weeks of emails and, trying to figure out like what direction to go in. It's like it's very nice to have that sort of like solid base. And so work is easier, we'll say. I can just go and do the hard stuff if that makes sense. Like I can just go in, solve whatever weird problems we're having to deliver whatever feature we need to do, and it's done. It's much more like compartmentalized. So like,
That's so nice. Honestly, I've noticed that is one of the key things for me for like mental health. Because when I start getting into this like nebulous walking through a fog of to-do list items and I'm like not entirely clear on what I should be working on or what the priority is, a lot of
right.
that is on me and just sitting down and prioritizing it. But yeah, I have a tendency to do that, and I notice it affects my mood.
Yeah, there's this sense of like, I don't know, like Americans and I think a lot of like first world capitalist countries have this huge emphasis on like what you do has this direct correlation to your value as a human, which like I disagree with strongly, but I also feel it, even though like fundamentally I can kind of pick that apart. There is still like this weird like value that I derive from the work that I do, and so as a result of that, whether it's real or imagined, like I like my emotional state depends partially on like how I'm feeling about my work. It's super, super weird. And I really wish that I could exempt myself from it. Um, but it's kind of unavoidable no matter what my thoughts are on it. It's really, really weird.
Yeah.
I may have gone too far there. Anyway,
No, not at all. I'm just waiting for you to ask me how my holidays were.
so Austin,
Yes. Yes.
how were your holidays?
They were good. I feel like I haven't stopped moving since last November.
You've been all over the place.
Yeah, let's see, catching you up on some things. Early November, I got invited to speak at Connect Tech, which was awesome. It's one of the cooler conferences I've been to. It's run by a couple guys that I really admire and I think do a great job. There's been a funny relationship building that I've had with the conference circuit, like conference speaker circuit. You see a lot of the same people, which is great, because it's cool to see these people that I've been connecting with on Twitter and then meet them in real life and actually have like what feels like more authentic conversations and relationships, you know. Then after that, I was home for a week, and then I went to London to speak at Modern Front Ends. I caught COVID, so I basically was stuck in the hotel room. Fortunately, I wasn't too symptomatic, but it was pretty miserable having this really cool trip that I was looking forward to. I was going to host like a pub crawl and a tour of the city because it was my first time there, and I just wanted to go and tour around with other people. That didn't happen, but I did get out of the hotel a bit, and I did miss out on a little bit of the spicy drama that maybe you caught into at Twitter. Mm-hmm. I wasn't there, so I can't speak to it directly. I did get some of the I did have my own fair share of issues. But you know, we don't have to get into it. There's a whole bunch of people that wrote stuff about it. That was a giant mess though. Yeah, but then after that, my partner and I went to Italy to visit her side of the family, and spent some time there. And since we were there at the end of November, we decided to stick it through the holidays. So I only just got back January 10th, I think. And then I went to go and speak at that conference, which was also an excellent conference run by someone that I admire and puts together a great community. But yeah, it's just been like, I have been craving home and doing nothing for so long. And yeah, so that's why, the streams had to be on pause. The show had to be on pause. And I'm glad to be back and getting back into some of the normal stuff.
Well, I'm certainly glad to have you back. Which conference was this last conference?
That conference.
But what conference?
It would be so tiring to be
There's
the organizer.
Abbott and Costello bit there. Just listeners who are of a certain age just assume that we did that. And we'll spare the we'll spare your ears from going through the rigmarole, but they had to know naming it that conference.
Yeah. I don't know if I mean, hey, it's their business. Not gonna judge, but I do imagine that they deal with a lot of confusion around that. Yeah, it was good though. I'm glad to be back. I was in Austin. I got to hang out. Let's see. Yeah, more people. Got to meet Dave Rupert for the first time. He didn't go to the conference, but we went to a little a honky tonk and grabbed dinner with Alex Reverie. I can never remember how to say his name. And then I met some other cool people that have been Twitter followees, people whom I follow on Twitter.
your tweeps.
My tweets, or I guess they would be Master Peeps now.
I mean, however that works. I know
Yeah.
there's been like this mass exodus from Twitter, and people have wanted to like stay in contact, and they're trying to figure out like how to do that. And Mastodon seems like one way to do it. I haven't even made an attempt.
We'll see.
Um,
We'll see.
yeah, I don't know.
So, uh, we don't really have any particular topic that we wanted to discuss. Did you have anything that's on your mind that you've been wanting to like jump into in the more tech side of things?
I just found a really interesting thing that you can do in VS Code. Uh,
Let's hear it.
so I have this tendency to like jump around and create a lot of stashes. And if people don't know, in like Git workflow, you can do lots of things, and one of those things is just type git stash, and you can either name your stash, or it will, I think, just store it based on like a timestamp or like a hash of the changes that you've made. I don't know how it's doing it, but it maintains like a history of changes, and so you can stash your changes, switch a branch, and either apply those changes to that branch, or just jump back to that branch and do some visual diffing, and then jump back onto your other branch and replay those changes by doing git stash pop. Um, anyway, this is like kind of cumbersome to do if you maintain like several stashes, or you want to name your stashes. Like doing this on the command line gets kind of tedious. In VS Code, uh, under the get tab, like they just exist there, and you can click on files and get a diff like immediately. And I know like probably a lot of people already know about this, and it's a thing. Today, I had to look up a stash from like work I was doing weeks ago, uh, because I wrote like some utility function that I thought I would just never use, and so I stashed it, and it's like just a change in a file in a stash somewhere. And so like I dug through, found that, pulled it out. It's like this like string manipulation thing to turn it into an object that fits into our Redux store. So like I didn't want to have to go and rewrite this, and I didn't have to. And it's all because like VS Code made it very easy for me to go and find that. And I'm so grateful that this is like a free,
Yeah.
very useful like
Yeah.
IDE.
Yeah. It's amazing how tools keep advancing, and there's always going to be free tools, and there's always going to be the paid tools that have like kind of push the envelope a little further.
Yeah.
But then it's like the bar for the free tool keeps getting higher and higher. I forget who I was listening to, but they basically compared Cypress testing and Playwright. And one of the Cypress features, the premium features, is I think running multiple tests at the same time or something like that.
Oh, like threading test.
Yeah,
Threading
running them.
tests.
Yeah, in running them in parallel, right, to improve the performance.
Yeah.
And Playwright has that built in. So yeah, it's like the table stakes just get higher and higher just to show up. So, and that's the same for libraries and frameworks and all these things. So they just have to be so good to get people to switch over. And I guess that's more discussing switching compared to like premium versus free. But like if you wanted to offer this other free thing, let's take a browser for example. Some people bring, there's a lot of like, how are you going to monetize a browser? Most of them and compete with Chrome, right? Well, if you want people to use your browser, you kind of have to make it free, or offer some sort of really good incentive. And the browsers that I'm thinking of are like the new Arc browser. I haven't had a chance to use, but it seems really cool. I want to check it out.
I don't think I've ever heard of the Arc browser.
Dude, it looks good. I have an invite, but it's also Mac only at the moment.
That's such
at the moment it's invite.
This is
dude, artificial scarcity, man. That's what it's about.
Yeah,
people love it.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. This like reminds me of the browser wars when like Netscape and like Internet Explorer and I don't know. Like the idea of monetizing a browser just kind of makes me a little bit uneasy, but also the idea of a browser being a total monopoly is just as terrible.
Yeah, or the idea of a browser being able to access all of the websites that you go to and somehow track those analytics because once again, if it's free, you're the product or something along those lines, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. But that's cool. I wrote a
Domino's quite
Domino.
upset.
I have missed her.
She's she's got a whole backyard now, so
She's
it's
back on the podcast too.
back on the podcast, making a ruckus.
I wrote a blog post about the like Git being or VS Code being able to track certain things in file changes that Git cannot. So in Git, you have this idea of commits, branches, stashes, all of these ways that you can snapshot your code and make it reachable later on, like move on or branch off of it and then come back and rediscover the code as it was. But VS Code actually has an additional feature where you can, just by hitting save, it has a timeline of all of the different saves that you make. And it also integrates that with commits. So if what's that?
So you mean like every time I save something and then like Command Z back and save it again, like
Yeah.
I'm using that feature.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah,
big
yeah, yeah.
Command Z and then Command Shift Z, like playing
Oh yeah.
changes
Oh
like
yeah,
forward and
back and
backwards
forth.
in time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it has that feature built in. And even if you create a file and then do some work on it, and then later if you like delete that file, even something that's not like that's being Git ignored, for example, a .env file, you can delete that file. I think you can turn off your computer, restart your computer, come back, open VS Code, and then create that file again. And because as long as it has the same name, VS Code will actually track the timeline of that file, and you can go back and recover those changes that weren't even being tracked by Git, which has saved my bacon so many times.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've also noticed that like even when files aren't saved, like they have survived just full blown. When I close my MacBook, about 50-50 chance it's just not going to start back up. So, and I have had unsaved changes survive that, which is so impressive. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing, but they're clearly doing it right.
Yeah.
When I was doing like a little bit of kind of platform engineering kind of stuff, or for a little bit there, some of what I was doing with a monorepo piece of tooling called NX had like lots of great integration and plugins with VS Code. Some of our employees and contractors refused to use VS Code up until they saw those kinds of integrations and how easy it was to work with our particular piece of software through VS Code with these plugins. Because they were on JetBrains stuff and it was like, I don't know what this NX stuff is. And I'm like, well, look, you can do all this in the command line. You just have to go and like read the README and understand how this works. Or you can like click through all of this stuff in VS Code and it will just work.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a huge barrier to entry to create plugins for the JetBrains of the world versus the like freebies of the world. And we're no longer in a time where it's like Sublime Text versus Atom versus VS Code. It's like there is kind of one powerhouse, and we're very
Vim.
lucky. Vim, yes. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I did meet one of the developers for NX at that conference.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they gave a talk. It was
which
cool.
Conference? God,
That
I'm not going to be able to stop myself.
No, you're not. You're not. It's great. Yeah, it was cool.
So,
they gave a talk on full stack type safety across multiple languages. So they had, I want to say a .NET. Yeah, they had a .NET backend, and when they made a change, they were able to use something along their like CI process. So the CI process, if they made a change in .NET to some sort of model that would have .NET types, the CI process or just a CLI could do the type checking on their code base, make sure the backend is good, and by doing that, they would, if they made a change, they would generate new types for .NET, and then they would use some type gen, like multi-language type generator, to then update the types on the front end, and then when the front end would build, if there was a discrepancy, which there would be because the front end was expecting a previous version of a .NET type, right? Then it would fail the build tool. And this guy was not necessarily talking about NX, but also kind of the hook was at the end. You can integrate this with NX to do like your monorepo management and enforce those type checking things. It was one of those good talks that's like, okay, you're not trying to sell me a product. You're actually like walking me through this thing and then giving me like a value proposition at the end. That's like, cool, your product does it. Awesome.
Right. It's an approach.
Yeah.
And it's, to be totally honest, this is something that I just pitched earlier today. So
I can connect you guys if you want.
I mean, he'd be preaching to the choir. I'm working in a new mono repo that is largely using TypeScript, but our types are kind of disparate and require a lot of manual updating. When previously, all of that like automatic kind of code gen type generation and cross-platform types were like, I wasn't cross-language; it was all TypeScript. But pulling it from like GraphQL and doing type gens and like consuming those and making sure when you make a PR or when you make a change, on one of the services you're pulling types from, like this is like super, super powerful stuff, and it creates so much safety. It's amazing. It's amazing. But yeah, that's awesome to see, and seeing it in the context of C# stuff. Like definitely rings some bells for me.
Yeah. So yeah, also at the last conference that I went to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Neatly avoided, sir.
Yes. I'm almost as good as AI. I'm like AAI, artificial intelligence. Never mind. That was a bad joke. But to say that I'm learning, but yeah, I did a workshop actually. So I got to do my first workshop, and I learned a lot. There was someone that showed. So it was a workshop on building super powered forms for the web, which essentially covers some HTML, CSS, JavaScript heavy like web development stuff. And there was someone that showed up. Bless their heart, they were a C# developer and had never done and had never done.
So serious.
So they were a C# like video game developer doing Unity stuff. And I was like, cool. Why are you in a web development workshop? Like, why are you here? It was fine.
Excuse me, this is a Wendy's.
Yeah, and I had some prerequisites like installing Node, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, cool. Can you help me install Node?" Sure can. Let's do it. And we did and I was so scared because he was on a Windows, and I work on a Windows, but I work in WSL. And I was like, "Can you open the terminal?" And he opened up command.exe, which I'm like, "Okay, let's hope that this works." But
to Node's credit, it probably just did, didn't it?
It did. Node worked, and also my Git repo, they were able to clone it and get it up and running without a hitch. Like that, we didn't have any workshop day nightmares.
Right.
But it was fun. It was mostly, so I thought my presentation or workshop was beginner focused, and I had taken for granted just how much, like how far back a beginner means.
Yeah.
So, which is good. I got to learn a lot. It was cool.
Yeah, but you're also like your idea of how web forms work is much, much deeper than someone who maybe would consider themselves an expert web developer, right? Like,
yeah, dude, because this was my first workshop, and I had to do like a web form soup to nuts. It was a lot. It was a lot. Like so much goes into it, and I even got to like go and do a podcast with the organizer of the conference about like the content of my workshop and this and that.
Mhm.
And it's so funny because he's basically like, so why forms? Like, why are you so into forms? I'm like, well, they are ubiquitous and so many people get them wrong. And
Yeah.
they're just like deceptively simple. Because you think, oh, HTML form tag, couple of inputs, maybe some labels, good to go. But then man, to actually create an input that works, you need so much.
And
Let
also, I
alone
think like
the styles, like the styles, like things that used to require JavaScript that now you can do with CSS and how they apply to forms, and then actually integrating JavaScript, dude, to do the cool, like, let's replace for the HTTP layer, let's replace or like intercept the form submission and replace that with fetch. To actually do that well is so much work. That and and like custom validation is so much work.
oh yeah. I mean, you said it's like deceptively simple. I think it's deceptively complex, right? Like there's you can just throw a form together and it will work, but it's not necessarily uh, users will run into problems very quickly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I
So
mean, unless you just stick to the HTML and maybe like a bit of CSS, like if you just let the browser do its thing and reload, you can avoid so much. The problem is it's the unknown unknowns, right? So most people are approaching these things, seeing what they can do, and not accounting for the unknown unknowns, like what they don't know that is missing.
right.
Uh, and the best example, it goes back to progressive enhancement and just like harkens back to that concept just comes up every time in this workshop. And the one example that I think really drives it home is that Mitch Hedberg does this joke that he says, I like elevators because an elevator can never break. They just become stairs.
Es- Escalator.
Oh, did I say elevator?
You did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like an escalator. Yeah.
Yeah.
Escalators, because they don't break, they just become stairs. And that's
Yeah.
like, if you approach your website with that mentality of like, well, if it breaks, it just falls back to like something that still works, not as
Right.
sexy, not as beautiful, but yeah, so escalators are better than elevators because when someone is using it, if it breaks, one of those groups of people is going to have a really bad time.
Why did you have to say elevator? Now, so like I just got off a cruise ship for a week with my family,
Oh,
and
cool.
the primary form of transportation on a cruise ship is elevators. They all have glass backs, and for some reason, you're not only surrounded by the ocean, which will kill you if you fall off the boat. You're also high up constantly for no apparent reason. Like there's 15 stories on this boat, and they've got to put glass around every possible access point to fall to your doom, either on or off the ship. I'm a little scared of heights, so elevator is a little triggering for me. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, we can jump into that if you want to go deep on, you know.
I mean, it all started when I was 7. I'm kidding. I don't know why I'm
Okay.
afraid of heights. Probably because I'm short, but
I wasn't gonna say it,
I mean,
but I'm glad.
I don't think any of our listeners really are that aware of
Yeah,
my vertical difficulties.
yeah,
Now
vertically
they are.
challenged. Hey, that's all
Yeah.
right though, you know.
I can do other stuff down here. I'm useful. Don't count me out, people.
No, you were awesome. So, yeah, so that was that. It was cool. It was fun.
That's
Um,
that's so awesome, and it's funny because like you come away from like your teaching experience saying like, oh, I learned so much.
I have to, yeah, I want to get the so the the other thing was, I submitted this proposal as a workshop for a 4-hour workshop, and when I got accepted, I was like, cool. I started working on it, and I was like, man, I have a lot to say about forms. I have more than 4 hours of stuff to say about forums.
Yes, you
So
do.
I emailed them. I was like, hey, I don't know if this is something you'd be interested in, but I'm building out the content and I have, there's enough content here to do an 8-hour workshop. I don't know if there's someone slotted before me or if that's a problem. I just want to throw that out as an option if you want to offer that to your attendees. And they're like, cool, yeah, we don't care. What do you like? Whatever you prefer. And I responded with something like, well, it's your conference, so whatever you think is best for your attendees, right? Which was a mistake because ultimately they're kind of like didn't respond. So I continued with the assumption that I would be doing an 8-hour workshop, built out an 8-hour workshop, and put a lot of work into this thing. And then I follow up with them like, hey, just want to double check, like, where are we? Because I built out an 8-hour workshop if we need it. And it's still up to you guys. And they're like, yeah, why don't we stick with the 4 hours? It's like, cool. So
Cool.
yeah. So we powered through, which honestly is not the best thing for doing a workshop. Like ideally you want a little bit more breaks, a little bit more time to let people play with what's going on. And but I don't know. I mean, we've even on the function call here, we've had a couple episodes where it's like, all right, Grant, you ready to take a sip from this fire hose? Because I'm just gonna mouth spew at you. So that was not a very good visual, was it?
Yeah, I can smell that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's how it was. I talked to the people that were there, and everyone said they had a great time and learned a lot and this and that.
Yeah.
But definitely, there were some lessons that I learned, some takeaways.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That's really awesome. One of the things that I don't think we've had a chance to do, like we definitely didn't get a chance at the end of last year, and we're well into this year. We're 20 days into this year. Um, we we didn't like wrap up last year. Talk about
we didn't. Let's do that really quick.
yeah, and I also like to do. I don't think predictions are that useful, but like I definitely
How about
have
like,
some like commitments.
yeah.
Yeah.
No predictions. We'll do, what are they called? Resolutions.
Resolutions.
Yeah.
I can make some resolutions.
All right.
I got some plans. I got
Or
some
just
ideas.
plans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah,
feels
I
right.
want to know. Yeah, I want to know what you're all about if you're gonna like continue in this circuit life because it seems wild. I don't know.
Okay, so quick recap,
Recap.
and then quick plans for this year.
Let's do it.
Let's see. 2022 was an interesting year. It was my first full year as a developer advocate for Akamai. Um, developer advocate. It's been interesting. I think I was really excited about Akamai as a product and as a company. It's been kind of difficult with uh, some of the advocacy work because it's a very closed off system. Not closed off, but it's like a walled garden system where it's very enterprise focused. So
Yeah.
it's hard for me to be like, hey, check out this really awesome product and you should check it out. And then there's no way to really, like, unless you're an Akamai customer, it
Yep.
might be more difficult to check it out. That said, we did acquire Linode, which makes that story a lot easier because then
Yeah.
Linode's got like, very accessible. I could get someone $100 credits to get started, and we can just like walk through and build something out. And that's really cool because then there's also the full end of the spectrum where Akamai had the CDN, the web application firewall, the edge compute, the identity management, all of these products. But no, they all sit on top of some sort of origin server or application, existing application.
Mm-hmm.
Now with Linode, we can start from scratch, and that provides the origin hosting service, and then put Akamai on top of that. So that's been cool.
Yeah.
I was doing. I'm still like hitting my stride with content creation. I've narrowed down to producing a video every 2 weeks and then kind of turning that into a blog post every 2 weeks staggered. That's been a lot. that's been a lot because it's coming up with ideas, it's coming up with like demo projects to then talk about that,
Mhm.
or showcase the thing, and then capturing the analytics after it and promoting it and all of this stuff. And that's been a lot of work. I think that might need to change this coming year. And the travel has been a lot of fun, also a lot.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, well, I mean, maybe just because where I'm feeling it right now. I mean, I have another conference to go to in 2 weeks, and then another one 2 weeks after that.
Oh,
So
geez.
yeah, but it's cool and it's fun and it's good for now. We'll see. I'm trying to find my cadence.
Okay. Yeah. Like, where's your happy place?
Yeah,
Like days away.
yeah. And I
Gotcha.
think as far as like tech stuff, I want to take some time and check out. I think I'm going to take some time and check out Quick this year. So I've done. I mean, I got a big background in Vue. Last year, I spent a lot of time checking out Remix, and that kind
Mhm.
of inherently got me more into the React world. Remix is awesome. Still don't love React, but there are some issues with that whole generation of JavaScript frameworks, Vue, React, Svelte, all of these. There's some issues that maybe we can talk about on another show that uh, is a is kind of a problem for both server rendering and then the hydration story. And I don't know if any of them actually support like streaming. So with the caliber of developers that I work with and a lot of the issues that we're solving at like enterprise, like the biggest brands in the world, the problems that they're facing and the people that are solving these or helping them solve these problems and the exposure of content that the content I'm exposed to, yeah, you just become more aware of some of those issues. And not to say that it's like revolving the JavaScript hype cycle even more, but that just seems like the changes that they're making are kind of uh, it's a large enough change to actually be like a paradigm shift as opposed to just a different flavor of the same thing.
That's interesting. I see what you're saying. Um, it's funny you mentioned that like uh, React still is not the belle of your ball. Uh,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I understand that much more the more I kind of work in um, the more I work in other people's code bases, we'll say, right? The the more exposure I get to how people have used React over the last, we'll call it 3 to 4 years.
Hmm.
I understand a lot of people's misgivings. I totally do.
You
Now,
know, it has grown on me though in the last year, so I do feel better towards it.
I would really, I would be super curious if you were to be exposed to a very well written React code base, like a very,
You know what kills me ultimately at the end of the day is JSX. JSX was a mistake.
oh,
Not
you're just
JSX
wrong.
itself. What?
You're just wrong.
No, 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 I'm not. Class 4 attributes, the default values, like all that stuff is bad. Class
What?
like having to write class name instead of class.
Yeah, that can be fixed. What's your other problem?
Well, just that those things. The fact that like native HTML attributes, some of them aren't being used for reasons because
Mhm.
they're reserved keywords in JavaScript. I get it. Apparently, JSX2 fixes that,
Yep, they're
but
resolving
we're
it.
not there.
It's a translation issue. Like
Yeah.
that's like been a known thing, and that's also, in my opinion, the trade off in like the power that you get uh,
Oh,
in.
yeah. I like it. I like I like I like using React. I like using JSX. Not as much as other things.
Okay, I mean, like some of the largest front end frameworks that are forthcoming right now, like that's one of the big things that they don't change. is that
Yes.
style of mixed markup with logic with styling. You can separate it out however you want, but like at the end of the day, these
Yeah, yeah.
things are a singular concern, which is the paradigm shift that everyone has really pushed back on with React. Anyway, sorry, like let's not get
Anyway,
super
let's
off
get
on the weeds.
to let's get to your little recap thing and your promises and hopes and dreams for 2023.
Okay. Well, so I'll do a recap, but
You're not feeling very hopeful.
so like yeah, last year was not great for me. Like to be
Mm.
totally like it just was. It's a it's a bad year at best, we'll say. And then you know what that leaves is a huge amount of open space for this year to be better. Like it really wouldn't take much for this next year to improve upon what the last year has been. There are a few areas of my life that are just like spectacular. I wouldn't trade for the world. Like my immediate family, my little dude, my wife, like everything with that is great and fantastic. Job is secure, but there are huge shifts that have happened there that I just want the place to calm the fuck down. To be totally honest, like just chill, um, just be stable for a minute, and then you know, all, all I really care about doing outside of those things, like to you know keep my level of sanity in check, is riding bikes. Like that
Yeah.
has been like a saving grace for me, and like getting out into uh, you know the mountains or out by the coast or whatever. Like that has like honestly saved me quite a few times this year. Like it's been great. So I definitely plan to do more of that. Uh, Work, I want to just be less and less important. Um,
Wait,
I
you want work to be less important, or you want to be less important to your work?
If I'm less important to my work, I feel like that would create problems for me. So like
Okay.
I want to stay important there,
Hmm.
or as important as I need to be to have it remain
Just
stable.
enough to get by.
Dude, really? I mean, I right now I need to work, and it's not necessarily. I mean, I think you get this just as much as like anybody listening to this might. Um, there are times in life where work feels so unimportant,
Hmm.
and you've just got to kind of do it. And then there are times where it's like kind of exciting, and some of the problems, like I don't want to say like keep you up at night, but like they excite you enough to
They excite
distract
you,
you in your
yeah.
life. Right? Yeah. Like I'm not there. I'm not at that place. I'm in the other place where it's like I can do this enough to get things done.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that I can like muster the concentration to push through and do that. I know that's not something that everybody is able to do, and that makes it really hard, especially people like me with like ADHD and like that sort of thing. But like you know, I'm at least able to perform, which is
Yeah.
good. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's tough because you spend a third of your day doing the work, and
yeah.
it's tough when it's yeah. I'm sorry. I hope that changes.
I mean, having a job that I'm not like super excited about is like the easiest problem to have.
Yeah, but I could still hope for you to have more.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sure it'll get better or different or whatever. Like I'm sure when we're having this conversation a year from now, like nothing will be the same. And hopefully in a good way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, hopefully this apocalyptic hellscape doesn't continue going downhill.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
How about I mean, you got any more hopeful
I
things,
mean,
wishes on the horizon
I mean, I've
to yeah.
I've got big races coming up this year. I'm gonna be
Nice.
doing the BWR here in San Diego, which is like I'm doing their 75 mile race, and then I'm gonna do like 100 and something mile race out in Colorado later in the year. So like that's like where my head's at. That's what I'm focused on.
That's awesome, man. You really fell into the biking stuff. I love that for
It's
you.
it's a problem. I
I
mean,
need a hobby.
you've got your ride leader flag behind you. I know what you're all about. You're
Yeah,
you're like on
but
the edge of that.
that comes the most beautiful 3 months out of the year. But for the rest of the year, it's long.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I've been sad with like the last week and a half, 2 weeks that we've had where it's been raining.
Hmm. Do you mean sad as in like seasonal affective disorder,
Sure. I mean, we could call it
or
all of
just
that.
sad? I've been
I've
sad.
just like, yeah, I've had to like
Yeah,
ride my bike indoors and this and that. But like
yeah,
I have kind of imagined a few times like if I did live somewhere where it wasn't beautiful most of the time,
yeah.
I don't know, you could get rain gear. Like, don't be a fair weather cyclist. Come on.
No, but it's the pedal palooza only happens. I'd still ride my bike throughout the year.
Okay.
And yeah, I do have a trainer, which has been great. So like one of those stationary bike trainers that I can
Yeah.
hook my bike up to, and that's like awesome. Uh, but yeah, cool. Well, you got anything else that you want to end on? I think I don't know. Do you want to do shout outs or anything? Or I feel like it's nice to end on a high note of just things we're looking forward to.
I think those are shout out. I think it's about the friends we made along the way.
Cool. Well, yeah, we'll call it at that then. And it's been a pleasure. I'm really glad that we got to reconnect, and we'll get back on the horse and start doing these more regularly and be checking in.
That poor horse. We're so heavy.
I know it's been going for years, and it just wants it to end.
It's a
It just
strong
wants
horse. It's actually a pony where it's like just as wide as it is tall.
Yeah, but it's got those beautiful Clydesdale hoof sock things. What do they call it? Like, they're like leg warmers for horses, and they're built in.
So I was reading a Reddit post the other night, and this directly relates to what we're talking about. It's not a crazy it's a crazy tangent, but anyway, let me go. there's a Reddit thread on like, what did you not learn until embarrassingly late in life? And one of the responses is that horseshoes did not actually contain horse feet with toes and everything. This person honestly thought
Wow.
that
Well,
horses
yeah.
had feet and people had
They're
put
like
horseshoes
stuffed
on them, and that was
into-
what the hoof was.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Well,
they learned that it wasn't the case by shouting something about doesn't that hurt their feet in front of a bunch of like equestrian folks.
like in the worst
And, like everyone just kind of
possible.
looked at them like, what?
Yeah.
Horses have
So
hooves.
you know, it would only be what would only take it even further is if they actually believe that they were like, because horse shoes or whatever these shoes would actually be really tiny compared to like a normal foot. So if they thought that they were like crushed in there, sort of like the ancient torture,
like the Chinese
yeah,
bound
like
feet. Oh,
yes, like bound
yeah.
feet, bound horse feet.
That's upsetting.
Man, that would make horse dressage all that more impressive, though.
Little horse ballerinas. I mean, they kind of are already, but yeah,
It's impressive. Dressage, sure.
Yeah, I always know it's a dressage horse when I run into it on the trail and it steps off laterally. Like, okay.
And
I've
also
actually
with,
never
like-
had that happen,
like
but now I want to
50
see it.
And like 50 steps per second. All right,
I
I'm
would
gonna
just
call
clap.
it. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you always know because it's got like all the ribbons and stuff on.
They wear them all the time.
because they're dressed so nicely.
It's true.
All right, Grant. Thanks so much. I don't think we had any. Maybe we had someone watching the stream. If so, I hope you enjoyed yourself. We didn't really announce it, but we're glad you're here. And for all of you that you have been waiting for the show to come back, we are not gone forever. We are back, so we're glad to have you here. And we will catch you shortly, I think, in the next one.
All right.